Hey, welcome in, welcome in. Here we go. This is a video I stumbled over from the Pitcher Lab, and I mean, it says evidence based. Everybody can throw 90 miles an hour. Let's see what type of bullshit they're trying to peddle here, because I guarantee you, not everybody can throw 90 miles an hour. Have you heard of dwarves?
Here's how I'd throw 90 miles an hour ASAP if I had to start all over again. And I know I've made a couple videos like this, but we have a new batch of guys who hit that big 90 mile an hour mark. And I wanted to break down exactly how they were able to do it. And we actually had more than 5 guys who hit that big 90.
Okay, 90 passes the eye test. It doesn't pass the fucking smell test, It doesn't. I know so many guys who can throw 90 that can't hit the brick wall. They can throw a ball through the brick wall, but they can't hit the brick wall. And what I mean by that is their command is fucked. Just because you can throw hard doesn't mean you're a good pitcher at all. Actually, it means you're a dangerous fucking pitcher. And dangerous in the form of you're dangerous to the hitter's health. Just a fact.
Since the last video that I made, but I'm gonna start making one of these every single month consistently, just to show you how these guys actually get to 90 miles an hour and see if you can implement some of the stuff that you
It really
see
isn't
into
about
your
getting
own
to 90
training as well. Now, the first thing that you'll realize
It's
as
about
I
having
go
a
through
good
a lot of
fucking
these
artillery
is that none of
and
them
knowing
worked
the
on
ball.
the same thing. I wish I could give you a generic guide on how to throw 90 miles an hour, do these exact things, and throw 90 miles an hour. But in pitching, it just isn't the case. And so
It's gonna be different
every
for
athlete
everybody.
needs to work on something different, right? There's going to be something different mechanically that you're going to need to work on, something different in the weight room that you're going to need to work on, and everything else. And so if these guys all did a generic program, worked on the exact same things, I'd argue that none of them are probably throwing 90 miles an hour right now, because it won't be working on what they actually need to work on to make the most amount of progress. And so this is something that we see with a lot of high school, college guys who are just, following the program that they get from the high school or the college, right? And everyone's following the same thing. Well, are you actually getting as good as you could be if you were following something a little bit more custom? Because we all know we have different things that we need to work on specifically for us than our teammates.
Yeah, and you gotta go out
This
and
is the
try
approach
these
that we
things.
took for each of our guys. And
Hey, they
to make it
called
extremely
Trevor Bauer
simple,
crazy
I'm going
for
to break
saying
it
this.
down in 2 parts. For these guys, it's mechanics and engine. This is how we see pitching velocity. So the engine is basically your physical ability to produce enough force to throw 90 miles an hour. Is your
To go more than 2 or 3 innings.
body actually able to produce enough force to throw 90 miles an hour? And if it is able to do it, then how well are you able to transfer all that force up the chain into the back of the ball to throw hard? Because, you can have an absolute physical beast. You can get Usain Bolt to try to throw, and it's not going to throw 90 miles an hour. It's because he doesn't have the mechanics to do so.
You
And so
gotta have the
you need
coordination.
both
You gotta
of
have
these
the
to be
know-how.
able to
You gotta have the
throw
experience.
very hard. But what you'll see is that
Guarantee you,
some
if
of
you
these
give
guys
Usain
have
Bolt,
a
like, a
bigger
couple months, he'll
focus
figure it
on
out.
one than the other. For example, if someone's an absolute
Maybe not
physical
90,
beast
but he'll
and they
figure
can
out how to
jump,
throw.
run, they're strong, and all this stuff, and they're an elite level physically, but then they throw, let's say 82 miles an hour, then it's like, okay, then your mechanics are probably way down.
No. Counter argument for that. These guys throwing 82 are fine. That's perfectly fine. You can get out throwing 82. You know, it's just the fact that today's game is built around who's got the biggest arm, who's got the biggest bat, and that's just wrong. That's just wrong. It should be built around who can help the team win. For pitchers, it should be built around what's your win percentage, how many wins do you get your team, and how efficient are you? Meaning how many outs can you get with the least amount of pitches? That's all I'm interested in. Interested in guys who get outs, who are efficient, not guys who strike people out, not guys who overpower people. I mean, you need those guys. Those guys have to exist, but you have to play to your strengths. And for pitchers who are smaller, for pitchers who are bigger with good command, it's like get outs, be efficient. Don't try to overpower people when you don't have to. You legitimately do not have to throw 90 plus. You don't.
here, right? Because you're way better than everyone else physically, but you're throwing slower than everyone, which means your mechanics are lagging. And so we will focus on this to bring it up to this level, and that's when you get a big velocity jump, right?
Yeah, but brother, velocity is not everything. Like, come on.
So this leads me nicely into Torben, which was one of those guys. He already had a pretty good engine, right? He was decently strong, decently powerful, and everything else. And so on the lifting side, there was no huge focus, right? All we tried to push was force production, his ability to move quickly, right? And being athletic. But the biggest focus was on his mechanics, right? And for him, the biggest thing for him was his back leg and how he gets out of his back leg, right? For him, he was pushing really hard out of his back leg, right? And this was causing all sorts of issues with rotating. And so the biggest thing that we worked on, especially Albertus, my co-founder, who was his primary coach, basically worked on his pelvis rotation, right? And how he's able to rotate down the mountain instead of pushing, right? Because when you push, it becomes very difficult to be able to rotate, right? Like, let's say you're here and then you get stuck and you got to push. Well, how much rotation do you get with your pelvis?
So before this guy finishes, I will just say the human body is not meant to throw. It is very rare that somebody steps on the mound first time or, been doing it for years or whatever and just throws 90. It's very rare. That's super rare. You know, the reason why these guys have to work at it and be in the gym and do rotational stuff and, do shoulder exercises and, strengthen the sockets is because that the human body is not supposed to throw. It's a hell of a lot of wear and tear on the arm and everything. That's why a lot of these guys who throw 90 plus are Tommy John candidates like a couple of years later. You're not supposed to be torquing your arm that hard to throw 90, It's just, that's the way it is. That is the way it is.
What we see with a lot of our guys is that they don't get much rotation, and they're landing, the hips are still facing sideways instead of it getting into rotation and facing more the catcher, right? Creating this separation, okay? And so for Torben, it was basically just maximizing his hip-shoulder separation, but more his ability to rotate his pelvis and separate it with his rib cage to create this torque. And so he was throwing like in the low 80s, and a lot of his outings he would just be like 82. And so one of the big things that Albertus worked on him was his ability to rotate a little bit better. And they did it with a bunch of drills, right? A bunch of drills, a lot of cueing, a lot of coaching, right? And a lot of medicine ball type stuff. And even in the weight room, just learning how to rotate a little bit better. And they did this for months on end. It wasn't just that, hey, we're going to work on this, and then he does it and he does it well one time, and then it's like, okay, we'll move on. No, like for 6 months, they worked on the exact same thing, right? And so he pretty much got this whole velocity gain from learning how to rotate better, right? There wasn't anything major else that they worked on, right? But the big key was that they kept working on that one thing that was going to yield the most amount of results, right? And so he did have a pretty steady velocity gain like this, right? But during this whole time, right, from 82 to 90, during this whole time, he was working on the exact same thing, right, which was this pelvis rotation. And so props to Torben, because a lot of athletes get bored working on the same thing, right? They want to work on the next new thing. And I'm guilty of this as well. When I'm working on rotation and I feel like I got it down, it's like, okay, what's next? What's my next mechanical cue?
Here's the thing. In the words of Jackie Chan, or fear the man who's done it 1,000 times. Fear the man who has it down pat, because he'll just be able to do it. It's one and the same.
That I'm going to work on. But it doesn't really work like that, right? The velocity jumps come in 2 stages. The first, when you actually get it to click, right? And it's like, oh, yeah, I actually feel it, right? For Torben, it was like, instead of pushing, it was rotating and really feeling that stretch. And it's like, oh, shoot, okay, now I actually feel it, right? And that's when you got a little bit of a spike. And then the next spike comes when this becomes subconscious, right? And you can do it a full intent, right? And so there are really like two phases or spikes when you're working with something major mechanically like this. And you might feel like this was
That was a hanger.
very small mechanical change, right? Oh, how can he gain 8
Another
miles an
hanger,
hour
but
with
it's
such a
front door.
small mechanical change? But with the mechanics, right, it's kind of like a
I
butterfly
want to get
effect,
out there, man. I want to
where
hit.
small changes create big changes. Okay, so if you're able to rotate better, then you're going to use your spine better, and then your arm action is going to get better, and everything gets multiplied up the chain. If you're able to get more energy up, then how I like to think about it is like, okay, you have 2 units of energy here. It multiplies with the spine. There's 4 units of energy here. And with the arm, it's 8 units. And then with external rotation, it's 16 units, right? Versus like if you only get like 1, right? It's like 1, 2, 4, 8. You know, that's kind of how I think about it in simple terms. It's like it gets multiplied up the chain, right? And so if you're able to squeak out more energy up here, then all of that creates more energy. In his case, it was responsible for like 8 miles an hour.
Starts in
and
your
so,
hips.
you know, I used to think that, oh, for me to go from 82 to 90, I probably miles an hour. And so, you know, I used
Brother, you just hit a guy in a fucking head at 95. What are you doing? This is the same problem that I have with these catchers going to PECs and doing pop times where they fucking launch a ball into center field way the fuck over the second baseman's head and the coach is going like, oh yeah, 2-second pop time. Fuck that, dude. Fuck that. That doesn't get an out. This pitch right here either puts somebody in the fucking hospital or goes to the backstop. Or the catcher has to be a fucking acrobat and jump up and fucking, snag that shit. It's like, that is just, this is dumb. This is dumb. This is dumb. This is like me setting up a tee in front of home plate and just like every single time putting balls out to left and putting them over the wall. It's like, what is that? What point does that prove? What point does that prove? That I can do it? That's dumb. That is dumb. I also disagree with the fact that these guys will PR. These guys will try to throw as hard as they can for one pitch and be like, I'm a 95 arm. It's like, no, dude, you're not. You don't throw 95 in games. You have it for about like a half an inning, and then you're out of gas. It's like, that's stupid. That concept is dumb as fuck.
Think that, oh, for me to go from 82 to 90, I probably need to become an absolute physical unit and push myself in the weight room and become like a freaking
but weight
sprinter,
helps. Weight does
become
help.
like an absolute elite
Being very
athlete.
healthy does
but
help.
The thing I want to remind you of is 90 miles an hour isn't special these days. There are guys who are, not as athletic.
90 miles an hour is always special. Brother, I don't care how smart you think you sound, 90 miles an hour is always special. Every single time.
Not as strong, not as explosive as you.
I get what you're trying to say there, but
a lot of it comes down to the mechanics and the timing of it. And we worked with him for about 6 months, and 8 miles an hour within 6 months is really good.
See, in the zone, 89.
But again, props to Torben for being able to be consistent and trusting the process the whole time. All right, before we keep going, if you have any type of questions, send me a message on Instagram below, and I'll be able to get back to you. I thought Hunter was a little bit different. Right, he was a guy who
listen, bro. Josh, the Pitcher Lab. If you're watching this right now, don't be afraid to comment. Don't be afraid to comment. I'm saying what I'm saying because I want to have a conversation about the game. I want to have a conversation about the sport. I think that I can come off a little harsh. I can come off a little cavalier, but it's like, I'm very passionate about this shit too. So it's like, I see this stuff. I play against this stuff, and it's not only is that mentality of throw as hard as I can dangerous for hitters, but it's dangerous for pitchers too. It's dangerous for their arms. It's dangerous for their bodies, especially at a young age. You don't know how many guys I've seen burnt during a summer season at like 16, 15 years old, and they got to go get fucking surgery. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Instead of teaching these guys how to spot up, take advantage of the hitter's approaches and get outs and get them to hit the ball and use your defense and be efficient with your pitching, you're teaching them to throw as hard as you can because that's what's going to get you drafted. Fuck that. That whole mentality has to change. Same with hitting.
a bit
Guys who
of the
get on
engine.
base, guys who have high averages, those guys are the guys that, will thrive and have better
I'm a
careers.
dirt nerd.
Those are real
I was
hitters.
homeless from his case. Yes, it was
Not guys like fucking Julio Rodriguez. And I'm sick of fucking watching Julio, man.
Jesus.
Sick of fucking watching that
Right, the
bullshit.
physical side. But his mechanics were really good. He moved really, really well, but he just wasn't able to throw hard, right, because of his engine. And so he was in the low 80s, probably topping like 84 miles an hour. And so the number one thing that we did with him was to try to bring this up, right? He was skinny and weak, and so he had to go through a strength accumulation phase first. And so trying to bring this up. And what was very interesting with him was we hammered strength at the beginning. The hammered strength, and then this started coming up. But then
that sounds really good, but for pitching, you want muscular endurance. You don't just want strength and power. You want to be able to get out there and do it again and again and again with your body feeling really great. You don't want to have these fucking, little, my back's tweaked today. My shoulder's tweaked today. My wrist is tweaked today. My elbow is fucking sore today. It's about maintenance. It is about maintenance. It's not necessarily about power and strength. It is about maintenance.
Throwing, a little bit even slower.
Especially when you get to the higher
miles
levels.
an hour, and started panicking. It was like, I'm getting stronger. Like, why is this not correlating? And it was because he wasn't used to a better physical capability. And so your body needs a little bit of time.
No, man. No, when you add muscle, sometimes it's a little more awkward. It just is. Sometimes it's a little more awkward. You need usable, athletic muscle, muscular endurance. You want to be able to control it. You don't want just, football guy, push one rep as hard as you can, hit one thing as hard as you can. That's not what you want. He's doing the right stuff in these workouts.
Used to this new engine. And so, again, Albertus was one of his primary coaches, and he was like, hey, just stay patient, keep trusting the process, and it's going to come. As soon as your body gets used to this new engine, it's going to come. And then what happened was he hammered strength, and it was coming off, hammered strength, and then we put him on a power phase,
my low back.
Because we felt like he was strong enough. And so it's like, okay, now it's time for power. Pretty much just being able to use a lot of his strength on the mound. And
where is the muscular endurance? Where's the endurance? Where's the endurance? Where's the endurance?
Explosive way. And so now we'll power. And then as soon as, he got into a power phase, something started to click in his pitching delivery. Everything started to time up well, right? And now he's able to actually use his added engine, and he was able to get a massive velocity bump. And for him, again, like, he moved quite well mechanically, but we kept working on that because mechanics is it's really like a never-ending process. Even if you throw 95, 98, there's always going to be something that you can work on to get a little bit better, right? And so we still worked with him. It wasn't like massive cues of like, okay, make sure you rotate her in. He moved really well. And so it was more about moving athletically within like pull downs, keeping the intent high, being able to sync everything up during a pull down, and even a lot of drills for his lower half just to make sure that it's starting to move a little bit better.
Yeah, so this is corny here, but steam room, Pilates, yoga, body workouts, body weight workouts, fucking calisthenics. All those types of things will help you gain better control of your body. You'll understand it better. You'll feel better, and pitching will become that much easier. Hitting becomes that much easier. Moving on the field becomes that much easier because you're loose. You're loose, not in a way of like your muscles are loose, but in a way of like you feel faster, you feel stronger, you feel more powerful. It's just a fact.
Not majorly changing any mechanical patterns, but just being able
adding
to
weight doesn't necessarily help as much as people think it does, especially.
And this is another thing with a lot of guys who move quite well.
Especially when most of these guys that I've seen around youth baseball are telling you to like bodybuild, and that type of bodybuilding doesn't produce explosive power. That type of bodybuilding doesn't produce muscular endurance. What it does produce is bigger muscles. What it does produce is less range of motion. It does produce power, but not necessarily for pitching.
All the boxes. They might, okay, the leg lift, drift, drop, into their back leg, they rotate fine, lead leg block is fine, they separate arm action, glove side. All of this is like checked boxes. But then they still throw 84 miles an hour, 82 miles an hour. And what we say is like with mechanics, right?
I absolutely hate, like I understand that the concept of the video is how to throw 90, but I absolutely hate that that's the only thing you focus on when you're throwing that speed. It's like, oh, I'm throwing 82. Oh, I'm throwing 87. Oh, I'm throwing 84. I want to get up to 90. It's like, okay, cool. But how about work on your command? How about be efficient? How about get outs? I mean, I'm saying it again, but it's like that should be the main focus, not how can I throw 90 plus.
To where, okay, you check the boxes, but then it's like, how well can you do each of these things? Like, how well can you time everything? An example is for myself, like, everything is checked, right? In terms of, like, good mechanics. All those boxes are checked, but I can still improve on my timing of it. So, for example, with my lead leg block, I do block quite well, but it is a little bit slow, right? It takes, if you're taking on a camera, it takes like 3 frames for me to completely stabilize, right? But if I can get that into 1 or 2, then that's going to be an improved lead leg block, right? And so it's like, instead of major mechanical changes, it's more about optimizing each stage, right?
Yeah,
and optimizing your mechanics. Because man, like you see the guys who throw 95 versus 100, like they're really not that different, right? But the timing might be
favorite example is Brian
different.
Wu.
Because again, baseball is a game of milliseconds. And I was talking to one of the coaches at the Pitcher Lab, Tanner, the other day. He's trained multiple guys to throw 100 miles an hour, and I was like, how'd you get guys to throw 100 from the mid 90s? They're already elite athletes, right? And basically what he told me was it's basically a timing thing, right?
Guys like Lance Lynn, guys like Big Sexy.
Yeah. From these guys, it was just a pelvis timing thing where he had to get his pelvis open a lot quicker than what it was previously.
Guys like
another guy, it was, hey, he was so elastic with his upper half that he needed to stay closed for a little bit longer to tap into more of his upper body. And so it kind of just goes to show like tiny changes can create big changes, especially with how you move on the mound. But for Hunter, he required more of an engine first
guys like
before he hammered the mechanics. And so for him, it really went like this, like hammer, 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 and then he had a big spike. All this time, man, it's painful, right? To be able to put in a lot of work and not make any progress, but it's very normal, especially with velocity development, especially if you're going through something like a strength phase, because the strength phase, I mean, you're trying to lift heavy.
Want to save $1,000 guaranteed? Switch to Spectrum and get fiber-powered internet and 2 mobile lines for just $30 a month each. That's $1,000 in...
No.
But you're also moving it slow, right? Because it's heavy. And so your body starts to slow down just a little bit. And that's why he got a velo gain when we went into more, a velo/power phase. So that he starts to move a little bit quicker. His CNS is going, and then he gets that bump in pitching velocity. And so that was for him. But, for someone like Chris, I mean, he was an outlier result. And this was because, kind of like Torben, but way more extreme. Chris was an absolute stud, an absolute beast physically, right? As Albertus calls it, he had a V12 engine. But he was on 87, which is quite slow for...
By the way, I assume all these speeds are on their fastball. There's like 6 different types of fastballs you can fucking throw, dude. And that's just like the normal fastballs. There's a whole arsenal of shit you can throw as a fastball. 2-seamer, sinker, cutter, splitter. It's like ghost fork. Those are all types of, like, 4-seam. I mean, I left the basic one out. It's like, come on. There is so much different shit that you could be throwing. There's so much variation that you can use against hitters. There's so much that you can do as a pitcher to effectively work in this game without throwing 90 plus. 87 is enough. 87 is enough. As a matter of fact, in a world where everybody throws 90 to 100, 87 might catch hitters off guard. It might fuck up your timing, especially if you play with timing, especially if you develop a good changeup or a good knuckleball or a good fucking curveball. It's like, God damn it, dude. Most of the stuff that makes you a good pitcher is the knowing how. Everybody else washes out. You gotta know how. That's not being taught, not nearly fucking enough in today's game.
Was able to produce, right? He was able to sprint really well, jump really well, put up big numbers in the weight room. And so it's like, okay, why are you only mid-80s?
Bro, what the fuck?
Right, there's probably something there. And one of the things that Alberto saw was, you know, his mechanics, and more specifically, how he would dump into a T-spine rotation, a T-spine extension super early into his pitching delivery, right? He was kind of going like this and trying to throw. And so there was one change, you know, where he looked at it and was like, okay, this is the first thing that we're going to change. And Alberto's cued him on it, was to stay a little bit more in flexion, right, in the delivery. And so riding this flexion down the mound rather than going into T-spine extension. Right? And we didn't expect such a big velocity jump, but just by incorporating this, and firstly, right, like incorporating this, he got a little bit of a bump, and then...
Man, you just hit a lefty in the nuts. But I threw 90.
He started to master it. He started to throw even harder, right? And so for him, this happened within like 1 month, right? The 87 to 92 happened within 1 month because, you know, everything just clicked for him with this flexion. Now, I know this is an outlier result, but it kind of goes to show that if you have the physical abilities, but you're still throwing slow, then there's probably something major that's happening on the mechanical side, right? And something small just like that, just by being in more flexion throughout the delivery, can yield big time results. All right, real quick, I made a video on each of these guys on my Instagram, so go below and have a look at that, right? Especially college guys who, you know, do their lifts, they eat a bunch, you know, they do all this stuff to get big because, you know, when they go from high school to college, they're like, okay, mass equals gas, I'm just gonna get big and strong, right? And so they do that, but then they don't throw any harder. And so that's what we see a lot of our college guys who are struggling with is like, hey, I got big and strong, why am I not throwing harder? Well, it's because your physical capabilities went up, but your mechanics, right, are lagging behind, right? And someone like Abram was just like that. And he was a big guy, right? Physical capabilities were, you know, not as...
Bro, are you familiar with the concept that less is more? That's all this is. It's the same thing with swinging the bat. Sometimes when you torque up and try to hit a home run, you swing and miss way more frequently, you know? Sometimes when you try to just barrel a ball and hit a single, you hit a nuke. You know what I'm saying? Home runs are mistakes most of the time. Not for Shohei, not for Judge, not for Cal Raleigh. It's like those guys, you know, are big. Those are some big motherfuckers. They can torque up and hit something. But it's like, even with them, a lot of the times, I don't see Shohei do it so much, but I see Judge do it. I see Cal Raleigh do it. They try to overdo it. They try to do too much. Same with pitching. If you try to overthrow, you lose command. It's like, you should not be teaching kids to overthrow when it doesn't benefit them as a pitcher. It doesn't make any sense.
It's Chris, but he should be throwing like low to mid 80s. And so for Abram, it was basically all about his...
And what's even sadder to see is these young guys who may not, like, you know, maybe they come from rich families, maybe they don't, maybe they're Section 8, maybe they're fucking normal kids, you know, maybe they're right in the middle. If they get injured and they don't have the money to pay for surgery, or their family doesn't believe in surgery, because believe it or not, you know, some religions out here are saying no surgery, we don't believe in science. If they don't have the money to fix themselves after that shit happens to them, because some coach is telling them, like, no, we got to get you up to 90, 95, 90 plus, we'll get you there, brother. It's like, no, dude. No. That's his career. That's it. This guy could have been, like, one of my favorite examples to give y'all is there's a kid I play with over the last couple summers. He's smaller than me. He's effectively our closer. He throws, like, you know, probably on a good day, like maybe 9s, maybe 91, but usually his stuff is like low eights, and it's like, that's apparently subpar these days. But he's efficient. He gets fucking outs. He throws a great changeup. He mixes times. He gets people to overswing. He gets people to underswing. He gets people to pop up, fly out, ground out. Sometimes, this is pitching. Somebody hits a nuke off of him. That's it, whatever. Go right back after the next guy. I mean, that's lost on a lot of the youth these days. And it's sad.
Body. One of the big things that
especially since most of the time doing this shit will get you hurt.
Right? And so he wouldn't be able to create any type of momentum toward the target. He would just get stuck over the rubber. And because of this, he had to push out of this position, right? Because he was stuck. There was no momentum. And so he would get to his load phase and it was like, oh, shoot, I need to create linear momentum toward the plate. And so, okay, now I got to push. Right? And again, this is causing all sorts of issues with his pelvis
good way to fix it is flat
rotation
ground.
And everything
Yep.
else. Right? And so with Albertus, he cued him more to get the drift, right? Drift going with his leg lift. So drift, so that he's getting a little bit more momentum toward the target. And also a big thing with him was pelvis plane of rotation. And as Albertus has explained before, he did a lot of flat ground work. Right? Abram did a lot of flat ground work, and what this led to was his pelvis rotating kind of upwards, right? Upwards because of this.
You want to step on that gas pedal. You want to stomp it down.
Being on a mound, where
that's how you create
down,
momentum going
down into foot plant.
Drive your hips down. It's the same thing with throwing an overhand right.
What we call
you want to drive it down. You want to pound that knuckle into the guy's chin downward, so it's like a spear hitting him in the jaw. It's kind of the same concept. It is kind of the same concept. Not really though, because locating a ball I think is much harder. Both of them are really hard to time. Bro, what's going on with
For the first time in modern history, college students
Abram had a bad case of rotating upwards. Right? And so it was basically just leaking a lot of energy. It's just a lot more efficient when you're on the mound to be rotating down into foot plant because you're throwing, on a downward plane.
I want to hear about strikes. So I want to hear about strikes to outs. I want to hear about approach.
More downhill. And so with
that stuff matters way more than throwing 90.
With that. And so for Abram, it was a lot of lower body mechanical work. Right? And a lot of our college guys, unless they have like a really bad arm action, a lot of the time it is lower body mechanical work, right? Because, arm action and upper body, they have decent mechanics, right? It's not like they have a crazy arm action that's holding them back. It's more about, okay, how can we create more energy with the lower body, right? And using the mound so that more energy comes to the top and to the back of the ball. Right, so that's a lot of what we see with a lot of college guys. But for him, there was like 3 different things that we had to work on, right, throughout this process. Right, first thing was like drift, and then it was like pelvis, and then the last thing was weight distribution. So, he had a tendency to either be way too much on his heel or way too much on his toes. Right, it was causing a lot of inconsistencies. And so what Albertus cued him was to be more on his heels, right, so that he could drift and then get into his load better. But this is a very athlete dependent. For someone like myself, I like to be more on the ball of my foot because it helps me rotate a little bit better. But that's just something that a lot of our athletes experiment with. And we don't want to, push something onto someone, because if someone told me, hey, load into your heel, like it'll feel really good here, but then I'll get stuck because I can't really rotate out of that. And so that's kind of what happened with Abram. And then Reed, he was a case of just work on both.
It depends, because everybody's different. I mean, look at a guy like Johnny Cueto, who sits in his fucking load for hours, does his little shimmy, and then goes into his toes. It's like, I mean, he doesn't get stuck. They don't say he's getting stuck. I mean, granted, he's on MLB mounds. He's on, the top tier mounds. He's not on some fucking flat ground, weird bullshit that ends up happening most of the time in high school or college ball or semi-pro. It's like, that helps. Knowing that it's going to be the same thing every single time when you step out, that really helps a lot. That helps everybody.
right? So he needed both in terms of the engine and the mechanics. And so he was decently strong strength base. He had a good frame, but he didn't move very quick. There was all sorts of guards happening because he had an injury. And so what he had to do was in the weight room, right, really hammer some power force production work to be able to move what he's got in an explosive way, right? If you have a good frame and you're super strong, but you can't move explosively, then you're not going to be able to use that in the pitching delivery. Because in the pitching delivery, you have to produce force in milliseconds. And so within the weight room, you know, his frame was decent, but we had to help him use that frame and that strength in the pitching delivery, right? And so engine side, we had to work on that. And on the mechanical side, there were a lot of things that we had to work on. And so one of the big things that we worked on Reed on the mechanical side was his arm action. Right, he had a very inefficient arm action that was causing a lot of pain and injuries. And so we had to clean that up to be able to not only throw hard, but throw hard safely.
Brother, you know, what might help is muscular endurance training. You know, developing healthy shoulders, developing a healthy elbow, developing a healthy grip strength. You know, those things, you know, you got to do them in the right way to get the results that you want. Otherwise, you'll end up getting injured trying to fucking throw 90 plus. It's just the way it is. I've seen it so many fucking times.
Inefficient arm action, that can cause all sorts of issues down the line. For example, one of our athletes, Dalton Jeffries, he's had 4 surgeries, right? 3 Tommy Johns and 1 shoulder surgery, I believe.
See what I mean?
And a lot of it came from an inefficient arm action. And so if
the thing is once you get into that soldier surgery, that must be labrum, because if it's rotator cuff, that shit ain't coming back. That shit is not coming back. You know, once you tear your rotator cuff, you're pretty much fucking done. You know, you're going to live with that pain for the rest of your life. I mean, it's so hard to fix. And it's such a small, like, delicate ligament that it's like you have to take care of it. Otherwise, you know, and for some people, this is exactly why if it said how to throw, everybody can throw 90 miles an hour, I think I read that in the thumbnail, not in the title, because whatever. But it's like, no. A lot of people aren't even built to be on a baseball field. Sorry. No.
Increased velocity with an inefficient arm action, that's just going to cause another injury down the line. That's just not what we want. And so first thing was cleaning up the arm action so that it was safe, everything was smooth, right? And there was no overcompensations that was going to put too much pressure on the elbow or the shoulder. And then we were able to work on more lower body mechanics to send more energy from the lower body up into the upper body and the arm action to throw the ball. And so again, with these 5 guys, all of them worked on very different things, right? But the general principle is to increase your engine, right? And increase your ability to move off the mound. But the nitty gritty on what to actually do within these 2 factors, quite detailed and completely custom to these guys. And so if you're someone who's watching this, you need to gain pitching velocity, but you're following a generic program, and you know that's not what's going to get you to the next level, then you can book a call with me down below, or just send me a message on Instagram, and we'll try to come up with a custom plan for you so that you can make a similar transformation to one of these guys.
Yeah,
here's how I'll throw it.
I don't know, man. I don't know. My thoughts on that are, I would like to see a focus into, you know, what actually helps with pitchers, like what actually makes you a good pitcher. And velocity is nice to have, but you don't necessarily need velocity to be a good pitcher. Like, that's just a fact. And I see it way too many times these days where it's like, you know, people are preaching 90 plus, 100 miles an hour. We need those guys. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Look at a guy like Matt Brash. Injured multiple times. When he's out, he has great outings, but he gets hit hard around the stadiums a lot. He gets hit hard. He gets hit fucking hard. Pitchers supply the power. So when you don't have that location and you don't really, know how to use it, or, your tools are your tools, but you like to blow shit by people, it's like sometimes you get caught. And when you get caught, you got to have a plan B. You got to be able to adjust mid at bat just like a hitter. It's like, Plus, mixing of the speeds is underrated. You know, guys who can fool hitters are guys who can mix in good fucking off speed. That has nothing to do with velocity. Well, you know, I mean, I guess that's it. Let me know in the comments what you think about this shit. You know, like and subscribe if you like it. If you don't, you know what I'm saying. If you disagree, let me know. I mean, I'm trying to have a conversation here. Anyway, good video. Peace out.